Well, back in 1988, the University of Kansas Center for Mental Health Research and Innovation helped the state of Kansas develop the very first statewide outcome reporting system in mental health in the United States. And the first 4 outcome measures that we looked at was psychiatric hospitalization, independent living, competitive employment, and post-secondary education. Now, in those early days, it was very difficult for us to tell what exactly was the effect of the strengths model on those particular outcomes. And a lot of this was because the primary way that we started helping organizations learn how to do the model was through training. And as we know, that training by itself is fairly ineffective. But with every single community mental health worker going through our strengths model training within the first 6 months of their employment, over time, everyone said that they were doing the strengths model. So it wasn't until 2004 that we actually developed our very first strengths model fidelity scale. And that was to ensure that key elements of the model were adhered to for implementation purposes. So now when we went around and actually administered the fidelity scale, we could actually distinguish places that were actually doing the model versus teams or organizations that just said that they were doing the model. So in 2012, Fukui and others put together a study where they looked at the association between increased fidelity to the model and those outcomes. And what they found was that there was a significant association between improved fidelity and decrease in hospitalization, increase in competitive employment, and increases in post-secondary education. And for these teams, most of them were able to achieve high fidelity within 1 year, showing that strengths model practice is an implementable practice and can begin to affect outcomes fairly early with dedication by the organization. So right now in Kansas, 2016, we have 16 community mental health centers out of 27 who are implementing the strengths model at high fidelity. And as a whole, teams in Kansas that are implementing the strengths model have superior outcomes to non-implementing teams in each of those 4 outcome areas. So an example is, right now, 2% of all clients on strengths model teams were hospitalized at the state level this past year, compared to 6%, which is the state average. 24% of clients on strengths model teams were competitively employed, as compared to 16%, the state average. The post-secondary education rate for strengths model teams, people enrolled in colleges and universities, is 5%, whereas the state average is 2%. And 94% of clients on strengths model teams are living independently versus 88%, which is the state average. And of course, the state average also includes strengths model teams. So therefore, if you begin to separate that, then there's even a further distinguishing between the two. We've actually started to be able to collect measurements that go beyond just the aggregate. And we're able to start now looking at how does the strengths model benefit specific people. And we're just getting started with that Kansas workbench. But it's going to allow us to say more about not only does the model work, but who does it work for. And we've also started to expand the outcomes that we do track. So besides those 4 outcome measures, teams in Kansas were asking, well, we want to know not only are people getting jobs, but are they keeping jobs? And are people getting housing, but are they keeping that housing? And also, as we've started seeing more and more people on strengths model team graduate from services, we've wanted to start looking at how many of those people are successful discharges that have actually went on to make great strides in their recovery. We help a lot of different teams customize measures that they want to know, does the strengths model have an impact in this area? But we're very careful not to recommend that an organization track too many outcomes. And mostly because the ability for an organization to focus in on and actually make use of data is actually very small. In fact, a lot of organizations collect a multitude of outcomes that they never do anything with. So our always feeling is that know why you're doing the model, look at those outcomes, get that data in the hands of the people who are doing the work, and use it to guide program improvement efforts. Efforts.